The court said, "You may call your next witness."
Ms. Murray said, "Thank you, Your Honor." The government calls Daniel Copeland.
Witness sworn.
The court said, "Please state your name and spell it."
The witness said, "My name is Daniel Copeland. Daniel, Copeland, Copeland.
The court said, "You may inquire."
Ms. Murray said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
Daniel Copeland, called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, testified as follows. Direct examination. By Ms. Murray.
Good afternoon, Mr. Copeland.
Good afternoon.
If I could ask you to pull the microphone in front of you and speak directly into it, please.
Is that better?
That's better. Thank you. Mr. Copeland, how old are you?
I am 29.
Where do you live?
I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Do you work?
I do.
What is your profession?
I'm a researcher at MIT.
What is your educational background?
I studied mechanical engineering at Vanderbilt, became interested in medical devices, got her MD at Tufts, and then just received a master's in mechanical engineering at MIT, where I'm working now.
Mr. Copeland, are you married?
Yes.
What is your wife's name?
Isabel Despins.
How do you spell Despins?
Despins.
Does your wife work?
She does.
Where does she work?
She works at Cambridge Public Schools, Kennedy Longfellow School.
And what is her role at that school?
She is a third-grade teacher in the SEI program, which is Sheltered English Immersion.
What does Sheltered English Immersion mean?
Ms. Shrofa said, "Objection as to relevance."
The court said, "Overruled. You may answer."
It means that her students speak a different language at home. And they come to her class to learn math and other things, but primarily to learn English.
And Mr. Copeland, in the 2022 to 2023 school year, what grade did your wife teach?
Third grade.
When did you get married?
I got married in October of 2022.
What is your father-in-law's name?
Luke Despins.
What does Luke Despins do for work?
He is a bankruptcy lawyer.
Mr. Copeland, are you testifying today pursuant to a subpoena that you were served by the government?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland, can you describe your home in Cambridge, Massachusetts?
So we live in a 5-family home, so there's 5 units. Our unit is on the first, on the ground floor. It's kind of a long unit, so all of the living room, dining area, kitchen are all in one room that faces right onto the street.
What type of neighborhood or area is your home located in?
We live in a residential neighborhood. Most houses are kind of similar to ours, multifamily homes. Relatively dense, maybe 10, 15 feet max between houses. And most houses don't have front yards. They're just right on the sidewalk, the front of the house.
When did you move into that home?
We moved in July of 2022, before we got married.
And who lives in that home with you?
Me, my wife, and our dog.
Directing your attention to late 2022. Did there come a time when individuals appeared outside of your home in Cambridge, Massachusetts?
Yes.
What were the circumstances?
So in November of 2022, some protesters showed up outside of our home. We knew at that point that they were there related to Isabel's dad's work. And, yeah.
To that point you just made, Mr. Copeland, what type of work did Isabel's dad, Luke Despins, do?
He is a bankruptcy lawyer, but he was working appointed by the government on a bankruptcy case.
A bankruptcy case related to whom?
To a guy who I had not heard of before then, but then had looked up, named Miles Guo.
And why, if at all? Is it your understanding that the protesters who showed up at your house related to Luke Despins's work?
So after, I think prior to them showing up at our apartment, they'd showed up at Luke's work and Luke's house. So we had kind of understood by then that they that this has been a pattern and that they were there because, to put pressure on Luke and his family in order to stop working on this case for the government.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, can we please put up what's in evidence as Government Exhibit 6194? Mr. Copeland, do you recognize any of the signs that are depicted in 6194?
Yeah. I can't say for sure that any of these exact signs were outside of our house, for example. But some images within the signs were definitely outside of our house, yeah.
And focusing on the top left sign. Ms. Murray said, if we could zoom in on that, Ms. Loftus. Do you recognize the individual depicted on this sign, Mr. Copeland?
Yes, that is Isabel's dad, Luke.
Isabel's dad and your father-in-law, is that correct?
And my father-in-law.
Ms. Murray said, we can take this down, Ms. Loftus. So turning back to that day in November of 2022, can you describe for the jury what, if anything, the protesters were doing outside of your home?
Yeah. So there was about a handful, 5 people. They had signs similar to the ones that was just shown, and some flags. And they were all wearing masks over their faces and then large sunglasses and most wearing hats. So they were kind of incognito. And they were handing out pamphlets that were similar, had similar images and related messages to our neighbors that were walking by.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, if you could please show the witness what's been marked as Government Exhibit 3450. Mr. Copeland, do you recognize the image in Government Exhibit 3450?
Yes.
What is that a photograph of?
It is an edited photograph of Luke being seduced by some devil-type form. Yeah.
Focusing on the photograph itself, Mr. Copeland, do you recognize the photograph of this item?
Yeah. So I have this pamphlet. It was one of the ones being distributed outside my home. My neighbor gave it to me.
And did you take this photograph, Mr. Copeland, of the pamphlet that you have that had been distributed outside of your home?
Yes.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, the government offers Government Exhibit 3450.
Ms. Shrofa said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit 3450 received in evidence.
Ms. Murray said, could we publish that, please?
By Ms. Murray.
So Mr. Copeland, now that the jury can see it, can you read the text that's written and the numbers on the top of this pamphlet? The image of the pamphlet that had been handed out outside of your home.
Just the large white text there?
Correct.
Extortion, and then the number 250 million, with a $sign next to it.
And the individual who's depicted on the bottom left of this, as you said, I think edited or manipulated photo.
Ms. Shrofa said, objection.
Who does that appear to be?
The court said, overruled.
Okay. That is a photo of Luke Despins.
Do you see the image that is on his forehead in this particular photo?
Yes.
Do you recognize it?
Yes.
What is it?
It's a hammer and sickle.
Ms. Murray said, all right. Ms. Loftus, we can take that down. Now, Mr. Copeland, you mentioned that in November of 2022, the protesters.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, could the government just ask a question?
The court said, so sometimes facts need to be stated in order to lead up to the question, and that's what she's doing here. Would you go ahead?
Ms. Murray said, thank you, Your Honor.
By Ms. Murray.
You'd mentioned that the protesters in November 2022 had flags. Can you describe the general appearance of those flags?
Yes. There was one flag that was blue and had yellow stars on it that I had not seen prior.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, if we could please publish what's in evidence as Government Exhibit W185. If we could zoom in on the top left portion of this image. First of all, Mr. Copeland, have you ever seen this exhibit before?
This whole graphic?
Correct.
No.
Do you recognize the image that's in the blue box on the top left here?
Yeah, that looks similar, you know, This was 2 years ago. But it looks similar to the flag that I remember.
And the letters NFSC, do you know what that stands for?
Yes.
What does it stand for?
Well, the answer is on the page, but the new federal state of China. But it's the organization or movement that the protesters were supposed to be a part of.
Was that your understanding at the time, in November 2022, that the protesters were affiliated with the NFSC?
Ms. Shrofa said, objection to the leading.
The court said, did you understand that they were affiliated with any particular movement?
The witness said, yes.
What movement, if any?
I mean, before this whole thing started, I did not know. But then I watched like a Vice News article, so I don't know if that was before or after they showed up at my house. But I knew that, yeah, this movement existed.
Ms. Murray said, we can take that down, Ms. Loftus. Mr. Copeland, did there come a time in early 2023 when individuals came to your home again?
Yes.
Can you describe for the jury what happened then?
Yeah. So it was I think January 2nd. So there was that one day in November, late November. And then they stopped coming after that one day, and then they started showing up regularly.
Ms. Shrofa said, objection and moved to strike as non-responsive to the question posed to the witness.
The court said, the question was, can you describe what happened then?
The witness said, okay.
Yeah, it was a similar situation to what happened on that day in November. There was also a handful of people outside of the home wearing masks, glasses, hats, and displaying similar signs and handing out pamphlets.
And on what date in 2023, approximately, did that begin?
January 2nd.
And approximately how long did the protest continue from January 2nd, 2023, outside of your home?
They were there every day outside my home between around 9 to 5, from January 2nd to January 9th.
Focusing on that time period, January 2nd to January 9th, what, if anything, were the protesters holding or displaying?
Mostly these posters or, on sticks, signs that had similar images of Luke wearing devil horns or text on them saying, like, Luke was getting money from the Chinese Communist Party and that he was working with them. And that Isabel was kind of indirectly benefiting from the Chinese Communist Party through Luke.
Did your wife Isabel have any participation in the bankruptcy case of Miles Gua?
No.
Is your wife Isabel an attorney?
No.
Does your wife Isabel work with her father Luke Despins in connection with the bankruptcy case of Miles Gua?
No.
What was your reaction, if any, to the protesters reappearing outside of your house between January 2nd and January 9th of 2023?
Yeah, it was pretty unsettling, for many reasons. We were, it's new to the neighborhood, we didn't really, know what they were saying to our neighbors or what our neighbors would think of them, and we still don't really know. It was, we'd, put our blinds down because most of our house is just kind of straight visible from the street. I work from home in the mornings, so it was kind of unsettling to know that there were, people standing outside while I was working. I think it affected my wife a lot more than even me. So, yeah. It was very unsettling, very disturbing. Yeah.
Did the protesters have any equipment with them when they came outside of your home?
Yeah, they would live stream from outside our home. So that was a big reason we wanted to keep the blinds down all the time, is because they would kind of videotape us. If not, they'd be videotaping us moving around our home. So, yeah.
How, if at all, did that make you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it felt definitely like a violation of kind of privacy. And we also would hear about things that they were saying about Luke and then by extension, Isabel online, and so you know. Isabel was concerned that someone maybe loosely affiliated or affiliated with the group would really believe this stuff and, you know, try and break into our house or follow her to work or, yeah, follow her.
Mr. Copeland, you mentioned January 9th. What, if anything, happened after January 9th, 2023?
Yeah. So Isabel's work starts early, so she leaves. She had a routine down when they were coming that she would. Her school starts at 7.
Ms. Schrofa said, "Objection, Your Honor. The question was what happened after January 9th, not what Isabel's schedule is at work."
The court said, overruled. You may continue.
So she would leave before they showed up at 9 p.m., 9 a.m. And then she would work later at school than she normally does so that she would get back after they'd already left. Usually around 5 p.m. So my schedule was, I'd be working from home in the morning. But that morning I got a call from her, I guess around.
Ms. Schrofa said, "Objection to the hearsay. And Your Honor, may we just approach?"
The court said, all right.
Pages 4223 to 4227 sealed by order of the court. In open court.
The court said, you may continue.
Ms. Murray said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
By Ms. Murray.
Mr. Copeland, directing your attention again to January 10th, 2023, can you continue to tell the jury what happened that day?
Yeah. So Isabel left for school before, before 7 a.m., got to school. And then I got a call from her, around 9, and, yeah, she was clearly distraught. And told me that they had shown up at her school.
Can you describe how she seemed during that call, from your observations?
Ms. Schrofa said, "He wasn't observing her. He was on the phone."
The court said, so he can describe his impressions that he got through the way she spoke.
Ms. Murray said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
Yeah, so she was clearly distraught, in tears, having trouble getting words out. This was kind of her biggest fear, that this would affect her school community, and her, yeah.
The court said, so you'll just limit your testimony to what you observed, not words that she communicated or thoughts that she had.
The witness said, got it.
The court said, go ahead.
What, if anything, did you do in response to that phone call?
Yeah, so I left immediately to go to her school, which is in Cambridge.
What, if anything, did you see when you arrived at the school that day, January 10th, 2023?
So her school is a short bike ride away, so I rode my bike. And on the way to the back of the school, I saw you pass by the front of the school. And I saw where the protesters were. And then I went to the back of the school where I was led in by one of the staff and then brought to the principal's office where Isabel was.
And when you arrived in the principal's office, how did Isabel seem at that time?
Yeah. She was still, really panicked, really upset, just really, crying and unsettled and just kind of overcome with fear and worry about what this would mean and.
The court said, so don't talk about what her thoughts were. You can just talk about what you observed. If you see somebody who is laughing, you can say they seemed happy, for example.
The witness said, gotcha.
So she seemed pretty miserable.
And based on your arriving at the school on that day, were the protesters visible from the front of the school?
Yeah. Or from where I arrived. I arrived from the back, but I then, out from the principal's office, which is in the front of the school, you could see them.
Did there come a time that day when you spoke with the police?
Yeah. When I arrived, the police were there as well, Cambridge police.
And what, if anything, did you report to the police?
So I think at this point we hadn't, we'd told the police when they were coming to our house, and so the police drove by on their rounds kind of more frequently. But at that time there was not much more they could do. And then, so the protesters at the school had similar kind of graphic signs with, the devil on it or bloody handprints or blood splatter, so we were kind of talking with them. If this is allowed to be shown in front of a public school, is there rules against, like, graphic images and displaying graphic images to schoolchildren?
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, all of this is hearsay.
The court said so.
Ms. Shrofa said, I move to strike.
The court said, you can't talk about what other people said. You can talk about the general topic that you discussed. So for example, I could say I had a discussion with my husband about breakfast. But I can't say he said, I want sausage and toast and eggs. You understand?
The witness said, yeah.
The court said, go ahead.
So we had a discussion about whether or not it was okay or illegal for them to be there.
After that meeting at the school, what, if anything, did you do that day?
So the Cambridge police, when we asked them that, they didn't know. They said they didn't know. This is a pretty unusual.
Ms. Shrofa said, Objection. Hearsay. Move to strike.
The court said, so you can't say the words of anybody, okay? Those words are stricken.
So we went to the Cambridge courthouse, or the courthouse whose district Cambridge is in.
What did you do there, if anything?
We didn't really know what mechanisms there were to prevent this kind of thing, so.
Ms. Shrofa said, if the witness could just answer the question as to what he did.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor.
Ms. Shrofa said, the thought process is not relevant.
The court said, it is relevant. It is relevant in explaining what he did. Go ahead.
So the mechanism that they suggested or that was close.
The court said, okay. So don't talk about what they suggested.
The witness said, yeah, sorry.
What did you do? What did you do?
We applied for a harassment protection order.
Against whom?
We wanted to apply for one against the actual people that showed up. But we didn't have anyone's names, and that was a requirement for the harassment protection order. So we applied for it against Miles Guo, which was the only name we had.
And why, if at all? Did you list Miles Guo under the restraining order relating to the protests at your home and at Isabel's school?
We knew that Isabel's dad was working this case against him, and that this was the tactic that had been employed in the past. And it was the only name that we had that we could put down for the harassment protection order.
Now, Mr. Copeland, did there come a time when you retracted that restraining order?
Yes.
Around when was that?
Later that evening.
And why, if at all, did you take that step?
We quickly realized that it was not going to be effective for or stopping protesters that were not actually the person we listed. So we just told them to rescind it.
To your knowledge, did Miles Guo himself ever show up to protest outside of your home?
No.
To your knowledge, did he ever show up himself to protest outside of Isabel's school?
No.
After January 10, 2023, did the protests continue?
Yes.
Where?
So during the week they would show up at her school. And then on the weekends they would show up at our house.
For approximately how long did they continue to protest outside of either your home or Isabel's school?
For a few weeks.
What steps, if any, did you take regarding your physical safety during that time?
In November, Isabel had a car service come hired by Luke's company to take her to and from school. That was for a week. In January, the Cambridge police were aware, so they showed up at the school, and definitely. Especially during the first week or so, when they were kind of figuring out what was happening. And then, so I was instructed to bring any kind of weapons I had into my bedroom, so I had a baseball bat in my bedroom.
And where?
In my closet.
And where, if anywhere, did you maintain that baseball bat?
I put it in my closet near my bed.
To your knowledge, did Luke Despins stop working on the Miles Guo bankruptcy case after the protesters arrived at Isabel's school on January 10, 2023?
He did not stop working.
Mr. Copeland, can you describe the effect on you of these protests outside of your home and Isabel's school?
Yeah. It was extremely unsettling. Yeah, it was extremely unsettling. And it felt, also dealing with the court system and seeing that there was kind of no mechanism that would help was kind of.
Ms. Shrofa said, "Objection. That is not relevant to how he was feeling."
The court said, overruled. You may continue.
Made me feel kind of powerless in the situation, so, yeah, that was.
Mr. Copeland, did any of the protesters ever physically confront you or Isabel?
No.
Did any of the protesters ever speak directly to you or Isabel?
No.
Did you feel that your safety was threatened in any way by their presence outside of your home during those weeks in January and February of 2023?
To some degree, yes.
And can you explain why?
I mean, I didn't really know what these people were capable of. Whether or not they really believed what was being said, and we didn't know, you know. They had put our address online, so we didn't know if someone else was going to show up that was affiliated or not affiliated with this. And yeah, I had read things in the past where people had gotten into altercations with them. So, yes, unsettling. Yeah.
Did there come a time when the protesters stopped coming either to your home or Isabel's school?
Yes.
Around when was that?
A few weeks, I'm not exactly sure what date, after January 10th.
Do you know why they stopped coming?
No, I don't know why.
Mr. Copeland, have you ever taken any action against Miles Gua? Other than the restraining order we discussed earlier?
No.
Have you or your wife ever attempted to kidnap Miles Gua?
No.
Have you ever attempted to repatriate him to China on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party?
No.
Are you now or have you ever been an agent of the Chinese Communist Party?
No.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, may I have a moment?
The court said you may.
Ms. Murray said, Nothing further. Thank you.
The court said, cross-examination.
Ms. Shrofa said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
Cross-examination. By Ms. Shrofa.
Good afternoon, Mr. Copeland.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Copeland, you're testifying pursuant to a subpoena here, you said on your direct testimony, correct?
Correct.
Who served you the subpoena? And could you keep your voice up for me, please?
The government served me the subpoena. Is that?
Could you keep your voice up for me, please?
The government.
How?
Through a lawyer that Luke's firm hired, I think.
Excuse me?
Through a lawyer that Luke's firm hired.
Luke, meaning your father-in-law?
His firm, I think.
His firm. What is his firm?
Paul Hastings.
Paul Hastings hired a lawyer for you?
Yes.
So Ms. Murray here served a subpoena on Paul Hastings' hired lawyer for you. Is that right?
That's my understanding, yeah.
How did you get it?
Sorry?
How did you get the subpoena?
Through this lawyer.
How? Like, did he email it to you? Mail it to you?
Oh. Email.
Okay. And then after you got the emailed subpoena, what did you do? Let me try a different question, okay? Just for a second. What was the return date on the subpoena?
I don't know.
Did you read the subpoena?
No.
Did you open it?
No.
You just went and met with Ms. Murray, right?
No. That's not accurate. I met with this lawyer, who was representing me.
Okay. And then that lawyer and you met with Ms. Murray together, or did that come around separately?
Sorry. Can you say one more time?
Sure. You met with this lawyer, right?
Yes.
You weren't paying for this lawyer, right?
Me personally, no.
Okay. And then this lawyer, don't tell me what the advice was. And this lawyer then put you in touch with Ms. Murray. Is that right?
Yeah.
And when you met with Ms. Murray, was that lawyer there?
Yes.
Okay. And where did you meet?
On Zoom or Teams or something like that. Video.
Okay. So the subpoena didn't tell you that you had to come meet with her, right? The subpoena asked you to come to court, right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Right. But You decided you were going to meet with her, right?
Yes.
You had no obligation to meet with her, right?
I think that's correct. Yeah.
Right. You could have just answered the subpoena, come and testified and left, right?
Yes, I could have done that.
How many times did you meet with her?
2 times.
And both times on Zoom, or one time in person and one time on Zoom?
2 times on Zoom, and then I guess today, we shook hands, but that was it.
Okay. So the first time that you met with her on Zoom, how long was the meeting?
It was 2 hours.
And the second time you met on Zoom was how many times?
Was how long?
Yeah,
1 hour.
1 hour. Okay. And it's fair to say, right? That the government is the only people you've met with before you testified here, right? You didn't meet with me, right?
I did not meet with you.
Okay. And when you spoke with Ms. Murray, she was taking notes of what you were saying.
I don't know.
Okay. She asked you questions, correct?
Yes.
And you told her the story that you told the jury now, correct?
Yes.
Did you take notes?
Yeah.
You took notes.
Yeah.
Did you give the notes to Ms. Murray?
I think they were just like logistics, just where I needed to be and when, so.
Okay. And how many times did she give you the logistics?
I think they changed a little bit from, so as they changed. Probably twice, maybe. I don't know.
How did she get in touch with you? She called you or texted you?
We only met through the Zoom link. She never sent me any other. It would have been either through email or, but mostly just the Zoom links, like.
How did you know to come here today?
The lawyer that was hired by Luke's firm kind of handled the last-minute logistics, so told me where to meet him and then how to get into the building. Stuff like that.
Okay. And when you met with Ms. Murray, you told her basically everything you now testified to before the jury, correct?
Yeah, just about.
Ms. Schrofa said, now let's just see if we could just go to, Jorge, may I just ask for 1 second, Your Honor. If I could just show you 3450 that the government showed you during your direct testimony. The government showed you this photograph, correct?
Yes.
And it's a photograph that you gave to Ms. Murray?
Yes.
Okay. And you had maintained that photograph at your home, right?
I had the pamphlet.
Okay. And do you know what the top part of it said? The part that we cannot read?
In yellow? No, I don't.
Yeah, the yellow part.
No, I don't have it memorized, no.
Okay. And what does the part over there in the white say? You don't remember that either, right?
Where are you looking?
At the bottom. You see that little corner?
In the box?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that said, no.
Okay. And you testified that this is the pamphlet that was it given to you by your neighbor? Is that what you said on direct?
Yes.
And when the neighbor gave it to you, he was sympathetic to your plight, correct?
Yeah.
He felt bad for you?
But yes.
Right. And since the time of these protests until now, you've lived in the same, you can take that down. Jorge, please, you lived in the same neighborhood?
Yes.
And basically your neighbors have been supportive of you, correct?
The ones we know and talked to about it and have explained it to, yes.
That's far more than what we do in New York. We don't talk to anyone. But the neighbors that you talk to, they've been supportive, right? Yes?
The ones I've talked to, yeah.
Okay. And during the time that you lived there, the protests were across from your house, is that right?
Yes.
They were not on the same street as your house, right?
They were on the same street. They're on the opposite side of the street.
Right. So this is your house, they are here, right?
If that's the street, then yeah.
Okay.
It's a one-way, one-lane street.
Okay. And you testified that this happened in November, right?
The first time they showed up was in November.
It's a winter month, correct?
Technically, no.
Technically, no. November is not winter?
It's fall.
Okay. How about January?
That's winter.
How about December?
Most of it's fall.
Okay. Wait. December is also fall?
Yes.
I've been doing it all wrong. Okay. So you saw people with masks, correct?
Yeah.
You saw people with hats, correct?
Yes.
And these people never approached you, correct?
They were outside my house but never approached me beyond that.
I couldn't hear you. I apologize.
Oh, they were outside my house. They never approached me.
Right.
Like, if I walked out, they wouldn't walk up to me.
Right. So you were able to go to the grocery store, do your thing. They never came up to you, right?
Correct.
They never hurt you, correct?
Physically, no, definitely not.
No. And they never threatened to hurt you either, correct?
Not directly, no.
Well, tell me how they threatened to hurt you indirectly.
I mean, they were holding up, like, bloody signs with my wife's name on them. So that was kind of.
Well, the name on the bloody signs, I didn't see your wife's name on them.
Her name was on them.
So let's just put that aside because we'll talk about that in a minute, okay?
Okay.
But there were no bloody signs with your name on it, right?
My name, no.
And the bloody signs wouldn't physically hurt you, correct?
That is correct.
And they never would threaten you physically, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay. And when they had bloody signs about your wife unfortunately was linked to Luke Despins, correct?
She's his daughter.
Right. So the sign didn't say anything specific just about your wife. She was linked to her father, right? It said Isabel Despins, daughter of Luke, benefiting from Luke Despins, correct?
They would say stuff like, Isabel Despins, you are not innocent, with like bloody handprints.
Okay, 1 second. So it had her last name, right? And she still has her last name, which is also her father's last name, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And you and your wife, I'm assuming, lived together the whole time, correct, of this happening, right?
Yes.
And sitting here today, you can tell the jury that nobody physically threatened your wife, correct?
No one physically, no one verbally or physically threatened her in person. That is correct.
Okay. All right. Do you by any chance know the age of the protesters that were there? Could you tell?
I'd be guessing.
Right. Do you remember a rather short old lady that always came protesting?
I don't remember any individual. They were wearing kind of masks that intentionally de-identified them, blocked their faces.
And this was in November of 2020?
One day in November of 2020, the rest in January.
Okay. And on that one day in November of 2020, did you call the police?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor. Just mischaracterizes the date that he testified to."
I'm sorry. You tell me the date, sir. I've forgotten. My apologies.
I think it was down as November 20th.
November 20th?
Ms. Murray said, just with respect to the year.
Which year?
2022.
Sorry about that. November 20th, 2022. Did you call the police?
I think so.
You did, right?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure about that, but probably, yes.
The police didn't make them move, right?
No.
The police, did they give you a reason why they wouldn't make them move?
There was.
Ms. Murray said, "Objection. Calls for hearsay."
The court said, sustained.
Do you have an impression as to why the police didn't make them move? Do you have an understanding as to why the police didn't make them move?
Ms. Murray said, "Same objection, Your Honor, to the extent it calls for hearsay."
The court said, if you have an understanding that is independent of what the police explained to you.
Yeah, I mean, the police explained, well, they explained it, but, prior to them explaining it, I did not know what the rules were.
Okay, but the police came and left the protesters there, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then they eventually went home, right?
The protesters?
Yeah. Well, the police did too, but definitely the protesters.
Yes.
And then we talked a lot on your direct about the protests in January, correct?
Depends what you think a lot is, but I think so, yes.
Okay. And in January you also called the police, correct?
Yes.
And the police responded, correct?
Yes.
In fact, they were pretty responsive to you. They would do drive-bys for you, correct?
Yes.
They wanted to make sure you were safe, correct?
Yeah.
You live in a nice part of the neighborhood where the police are actually responsive, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And when the police drove by, did they disperse the crowds?
No.
No, right? Yes or no? I'm sorry.
Ms. Murray said, asked and answered.
Ms. Schrofa said, I can't hear him, so.
No.
Okay. So the crowds were still there, but the police were also there for your protection, right?
They weren't there around the clock, but they were, yeah. They picked up the phone, yeah.
Okay. And you testified that these people were outside and they had some equipment, correct?
Equipment being a camera, yes.
Okay. It was just like a camera or like a whole unit, like a video and all the accoutrements that follow?
They had a tripod.
They had a tripod, right?
Yeah.
And you never saw anything from your family home published on the internet, right?
No, that's not true.
You did see the inside of your home published on the internet?
I saw our home from the vantage point of the protesters published on the internet.
No. That's the outside facade of your home, right?
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
Ms. Schrofa said, I did not ask that. Whether the video was of the outside facade of your home, that's the question.
Yeah, it was the outside of my home, yeah.
And nobody took a photo of your dog and posted it on the internet, right?
We didn't have a dog by that point.
Okay. And throughout this time, these protesters were still allowed to be there by the, what is it called? The Cambridge Police? The Boston Police? The Beacon Hill Police? Which one is it?
Cambridge Police. Wait. Sorry. What was the question, though? I was answering that part of the question. What was the first part of the question? They were allowed to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
They weren't ticketed, correct?
No.
They weren't told to disperse, correct?
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor. He wouldn't know.
The court said, well, he might have observed them being ticketed. He might have observed the police shooing them away.
Not to my knowledge.
You testified having a baseball bat in the closet, correct?
Yes.
Never had to use that baseball bat, right?
Not for home defense.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. Can you give me 1 second?
The court said, go ahead.
Let me show you what is marked as Defense Exhibit 70777. I'm only going to show it to you and government counsel, okay? And the court. Do you see this photograph?
Yes.
Were these the protesters that were outside your home? Do you recognize this photograph?
I don't recognize this photograph. I recognize the setting of the photograph.
What's the setting?
The setting is the outside of my home.
Outside your home, right?
Yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor, we move to admit this into evidence.
Ms. Murray said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit 70777 received in evidence.
Are these the people that were protesting outside your home?
I never saw a person outside my home that wasn't wearing big sunglasses. Personally never saw. This picture is different, so they don't look like the people necessarily outside my home. Or they don't look like the people looked like when they were outside my home.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. 1 minute. I just want to make sure the jury has the photograph. Okay. The man on the very left, right?
Okay.
The smiling guy over there?
I see him.
With the glasses? No mask, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. How about the lady over there with the hat, no mask?
She is not wearing a mask.
Okay. How about the lady in that yellow coat? she's wearing a COVID mask, right?
Yeah.
And the man next to that? Yes? No mask?
Yeah. No mask. Right. Correct.
And these are the 4 or 5 people that would show up, right?
Sorry?
Ms. Murray said, objection. Asked and answered. Also, I'm not sure what people she's referring to.
The court said, what is the question?
Ms. Schrofa said, it's okay. You do recognize this to be outside of your house, right?
This is outside. This is outside my house. Yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. We can take that down. Now you testified about this protective order that you applied for, correct?
Yes.
And you were granted the protective order, right?
Yes.
And the protective order was against Miles Gua?
Yes.
Okay. And it's a protective order that just basically, you tell me, right, said that Miles Gua had to stay X number of feet away from you, right? Is that what the protective order?
I'm not sure. I think that seems reasonable. I'm not really sure what rules, the rules were around it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was issued to you, right?
Yes.
Why did you bother rescinding it?
After talking to law enforcement, it was determined that this would not be helpful with our situation.
Okay. But why bother rescinding it? It's there. Who cares?
Ms. Murray said, asked and answered, Your Honor.
The court said, sustained.
I asked you, why did you rescind it?
Yeah. We didn't want it to get sent because we didn't want to enter some legal battle that wasn't going to help.
Okay. And Mr. Gwynn never responded, right?
No.
He was never within any feet of you, right?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And since January 10th of 2023, you've had no more protests at your home?
That's not correct.
There have been protests after January of 2023?
It was on for a few weeks, so probably.
No. I mean after the complete month of January of 2023.
It might have went into February, but after that, no.
After that, no, right?
Yes, after that period.
Okay. So on direct you said it stopped in January. Now you're not sure. It could have gone into February. Is that what you're saying?
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, objection. It mischaracterizes his testimony.
The court said, sustained.
Okay. You tell me.
It started in January 2nd. They were there every day until January 9th. Then they started to go weekends at our home and weekdays at the school.
Okay. And then when did it stop?
A few weeks after January 10th, so.
You didn't keep track of when it stopped?
No.
This very unsettling thing. You did not keep track of when it stopped.
Ms. Murray said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Ms. Schrofa said, I have nothing further.
The court said, redirect.
Ms. Murray said, Thank you, Your Honor. If I could ask the defense to put up Defense Exhibit 70777. I'd appreciate it.
Redirect examination. By Ms. Murray.
Mr. Copeland, you were asked some questions.
Ms. Schrofa said, Oh, I don't have it. Do you have it?
You were asked some questions on cross-examination about this photo. Do you recall those?
Generally, yes.
Ms. Schroff asked you about the happy protester on the left. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
During the weeks that protesters showed up outside of your home, did you ever, can you please keep that up? Thank you. Did you ever see any of the protesters smiling?
No.
If we could focus on the bottom of these signs. What are the words that are near the bloody handprints on each of these 3 signs?
It says, Isabel Despins, you are not innocent.
How, if at all, was the fact that the protesters outside of your home were holding these signs that included the bloody handprints and your wife's name? How was that a threat?
How is that a threat?
Yes. How, if at all, did that feel threatening to you?
Well, this is being live-streamed on the internet. So even if the people here were peacefully protesting, It's possible that other people would believe that Isabel was somehow involved or would believe what these things. These signs are saying, and try and harm us or, you know, make, you know, yeah. Yeah.
Ms. Murray said, and we can take that down. Thank you very much. Mr. Copeland, based on your observations, how, if at all, did these signs impact your wife?
Tremendously. She's a little bit more tight.
Ms. Schrofa said, objection.
Ms. Murray said, these are his observations, Your Honor.
Ms. Schrofa said, objection.
The court said, so you can describe your observations of her. Go ahead.
All right. Over the 8+ years I have observed her, she has been a very high-strung person. She really cares about. I've witnessed her dedication to her school community. I've seen how much she cares.
Ms. Schrofa said, objection. Move to strike.
About her job.
The court said, overruled. You may continue.
And I saw how stressful, I saw how hard it was on her. I have seen that she really cares about her kids and keeping them safe and making sure school is a safe environment for them and that they feel comfortable at school and comfortable with her. And I saw how the idea that she could be causing additional trauma in some of these kids' lives was negatively impacting her.
Mr. Copeland. You were asked some questions on cross-examination about having rescinded the restraining order against Mr. Gua. Do you remember those questions?
Yeah. Yes.
What concerns, if any, did you have in pursuing a restraining order against Miles Gua?
I was concerned that we would enter some legal dispute that would be pointless and, time-consuming and fruitless, so it was not worth it.
Ms. Murray said, may I have a moment, Your Honor?
The court said yes.
Ms. Murray said, thank you, Mr. Copeland. Nothing further.
The court said recross?
Ms. Schrofa said, would you put the photo back up?
Recross-examination. By Ms. Schrofa.
Ms. Murray, do you need a moment, Mr. Copeland, or are you okay?
I'm good.
Okay. So Ms. Murray asked you questions about this particular photograph, right?
Yes.
And she asked you if you'd seen any smiling protesters, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland, isn't it fair to say that you didn't particularly want to make any eye contact with them, right?
Yes, I would say that's true.
Right. They were protesting. You didn't want them protesting, right?
I did not want them protesting outside of our house or my wife's school.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a hassle, right?
A hassle is one way of putting it. I would put it another way.
Scary, right?
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, if she could let the witness finish his answer.
The court said okay. Please finish your answer.
Yeah, scary.
Scary, right? So you wouldn't want to make eye contact with them, right?
The court said, asked and answered.
So you wouldn't know if somebody was smiling or not smiling, correct?
I never saw them smile or saw someone's face. They were wearing masks whenever I looked.
They were all wearing masks whenever you looked. That's your recollection?
Yeah, that's my recollection, yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. Now you can take that down. Wait. Actually, leave it up here. Ms. Murray also asked you questions about how this language made you feel, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And none of the language is pleasant, correct?
Yeah, no, I would say this is unsettling language.
Right. And the police were aware of this unsettling language, correct?
Probably. They were driving by, so I would guess yes.
And they continued to allow the protests, right?
Yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. We can take that down. Now Ms. Murray asked you questions about your wife, correct?
I believe so. I believe so, yes.
And one of the questions, or one of the answers that you gave was that she was deeply concerned about the kids at her school, correct?
Yes.
She taught at a public school, correct?
She teaches at a public school still, same school.
Right. And it's basically an ESL class, right? English as a foreign language class?
Her classroom is an ESL class. Her school has a general public school as well. That's
Okay. And is it fair to say that the school was supportive of her?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor. Beyond the scope."
The court said, "Sustained."
Ms. Shrofa said, she asked about her reaction and what he observed. That's within the scope.
The court said, "Not about what the school did."
Did your wife feel supported by the school?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor."
Ms. Shrofa said, that's within the scope.
The court said, "Sustained." He can describe what he observed.
Okay. Did you observe the principal being supportive of your wife?
on January 10th, I would say yes. Other times, she had. You know, she would have handled things differently than how the school handled it, but
I cannot hear you. I'm sorry. But that's okay. Did you observe the other teachers being supportive of your wife?
no, I didn't. I mean, I heard it from my wife, but I didn't observe it.
Okay. And you testified about the length of the protests, correct? You testified about the dates, correct?
Yes, to the best of my knowledge, yes.
Right. And was that date specific to your home, or do you, sitting here today, know that that same length applied to the protests near the school?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, just to form."
The court said, "Sustained."
Do you know how long they protested outside the school?
I think it was a few weeks after, during the school day, after January 10th.
After January 10th, right?
Starting on January 10th for a few weeks.
Okay. And it ended before February, correct?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection." Asked and answered.
The court said, "Sustained."
Ms. Shrofa said, I'm asking about the school, not the home.
The court said, "It's 2:29.
Ms. Shrofa said, I have 2 more questions, Your Honor.
The court said, "Go ahead."
By Ms. Shrofa.
When you got the protective order against Miles Gua, did you even serve him?
Ms. Murray said, asked and answered, "Your Honor."
Ms. Shrofa said, No. I did not ask if he was served.
The court said, "Did you personally serve him?"
The witness said, no.
So Mr. Gua didn't even have knowledge of the protective order, correct?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection."
The court said, "He cannot speak to what knowledge Mr. Gua had."
And since you got the protective order or rescinded the protective order, Mr. Gua has not engaged in any litigation with you, correct?
Correct.
He's never sued you, correct?
Ms. Murray said, asked and answered.
The court said, "Sustained."
He's never sued your wife, correct?
Correct.
Ms. Shrofa said, Okay. Thank you very much.
Ms. Murray said, "Nothing further." "Thank you."
The court said, "Thank you, sir. You may step out."
Witness excused.
The court said, "And it's time for our break. We'll reconvene in half an hour. Remember that you're not allowed to talk amongst yourselves about the case or permit anyone to talk about the case in your presence. Don't read, listen, or watch anything having to do with this case."
Continued on next page. Jury not present.
The court said, "You may be seated. Is there anything further?"
Ms. Murray said, "Nothing from the government."
Ms. Shrofa said, No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Finkel said, we were notified by the defense with respect to the issue we talked about at sidebar. The parties reached an accommodation.
The court said, "Okay. Thank you."
Recess.